In the dark silence of space, a small human ship emerged from the swirling colors of hyperspace. It was nothing like the huge, shining starships of the Seraphon Empire. The ship was simple, worn, but it carried something important. Commander Eli Morgan, the human of legend. For years, the Seraphon people had told stories about humans. They said humans were weak, small, and slow. But there were whispers, quiet rumors among the stars. They spoke of one human who was different. This human was clever, brave, and unstoppable. Some called him a hero, others called him a threat. Eli's ship moved slowly toward the great capital world of the Seraphon Empire, a planet covered in glowing cities and tall towers. This was the heart of the empire, the place where the queen lived. As the ship landed, a group of Seraphon guards in shining armor waited. They were tall, with blue skin and eyes that glowed softly in the dim light. They looked at Eli carefully, but they did not speak. A short time later, Eli was taken to the throne room. The room was enormous, filled with strange lights and tall columns that reached the ceiling. At the far end sat the Seraphon queen on a throne made of silver and crystal. She looked strong and proud, with eyes like burning stars. When Eli stepped forward, the room fell silent. All eyes were on him. The queen stood slowly and looked at Eli with surprise. "It's true, then," she whispered, almost to herself. "You really are the human of legend." Eli nodded. He was not a tall man, but his presence filled the room. "I am Commander Eli Morgan," he said simply. "I came to talk." The queen's voice was calm but firm. "You come at a difficult time, Commander. The Empire faces threats from many sides. Why should we trust a human?" Eli smiled slightly. "Because I offer more than trust. I offer a chance to survive." The queen raised her hand, and a group of her advisors stepped forward. They were wise men and women, dressed in flowing robes covered with strange symbols. They whispered among themselves, clearly unsure of Eli's words. Eli looked around and saw fear in some eyes. But he also saw curiosity. The Seraphon were proud and strong, but they lacked something. Hope. The queen spoke again. "Tell us your story, human. Show us why you are more than a myth." Eli took a deep breath and began. "Years ago, on a small blue planet called Earth, humans lived in many countries. They fought wars and faced disasters, but they never gave up. They invented new technologies and dreamed of the stars. Humans were not the strongest, but they were clever. They used their minds and their hearts to survive. Eli had served in Earth's space forces. He had seen battles where his ship was outnumbered and outgunned, but every time he found a way to win by thinking differently. His crew trusted him because he never gave up." The Seraphon listened quietly. For them, war was about power and strength. But Eli spoke of courage, of friendship, and of fighting for a better future. The queen's eyes narrowed. "You say humans are clever, but what makes you different from any other species?" Eli smiled. "Humans don't just fight. We learn, we adapt, and we never stop trying. Even when the odds are against us, we find a way. That is why I'm here." A young Seraphon officer stepped forward. "You say you are a commander, but your ship is small. Where are your fleets? Your armies?" Eli looked at the officer calmly. "Sometimes the strongest weapon is the mind. My ship is small because I do not need large fleets to win. I need allies who understand what it means to fight smart." The queen stood again. "Very well, Commander Eli Morgan. You will stay. At the palace. You will meet our leaders and learn our ways. But remember, you are a guest here. Prove to us that humans deserve a place among the stars." Eli bowed his head slightly. "I will not disappoint you, Your Majesty." In the following days, Eli was taken through the great city. The Seraphon capital was unlike anything he had seen. Machines floated in the air, and the streets shone with blue light. The people were tall and graceful, but they moved stiffly. Their faces were serious, and they rarely smiled. Eli met many of the Seraphon leaders. Some were friendly, some cold, and some openly suspicious. They questioned him about Earth and human history. Eli answered honestly, sharing stories of human courage and failure alike. At night, Eli looked up at the stars from his room. He thought about his home, about the battles he had fought, and about the future. He knew that to survive here, he would have to teach these proud aliens something new. He was ready. One afternoon, the Seraphon Queen invited Eli to a special gathering. It was a meeting of the Empire's most powerful generals and scientists. The Queen wanted to hear Eli's ideas. Eli stood before the group and began to speak. The galaxy is changing. New enemies are coming. You cannot rely on old ways. You must be flexible. You must use creativity in battle. You must trust each other. The generals looked at each other nervously. Some whispered, "He is too bold." Others said, "Perhaps he is right." The Queen watched Eli carefully. For the first time, she saw not just a human, but a potential leader. As the meeting ended, the Queen said softly, "Commander, you have shown us much today, but the true test is yet to come." Eli nodded. "I am ready." After his arrival, Eli Morgan was not treated as a guest. Instead, he was a challenge, a puzzle for the Seraphon Empire to solve. The Queen wanted to see what made this human special. She arranged a series of tests to push Eli's mind and body, to see if he truly deserved the title of Human of Legend. The first test took place in the Hall of Minds. The room was a vast chamber filled with strange machines and glowing symbols. Seraphon scholars called it the Chamber of Strategy. Here, warriors from all over the Empire practiced their war tactics. The challenge was simple: win a simulated battle against the Empire's best commanders. Eli watched as holograms flickered to life, showing an enemy fleet approaching the Seraphon homeworld. The simulation was difficult, designed to trap any commander with complex moves and traps. The other commanders played by the book, relying on their powerful ships and technology, but Eli thought differently. He noticed patterns the others missed. Instead of attacking head-on, he ordered his fleet to split and attack from unexpected angles. He used feints and distractions. Slowly, the tide of the simulated battle turned. The Seraphon commanders watched in surprise as their own tactics were outmatched. When the simulation ended, the chamber was silent. Then, one of the oldest generals stepped forward. "You fought not with strength, but with mind. Your tactics are unlike any we have seen." Eli nodded. "War is not just about power. It is about thinking ahead, about adapting." The Queen, seated on a balcony overlooking the chamber, smiled faintly. This was only the beginning. Next came the test of endurance. The Seraphon people were proud of their physical strength. Eli had heard stories of warriors who could fight for days without rest. The test was a long journey across the harsh mountain lands near the capital. The goal was simple: reach the top of the tallest peak faster than any challenger. Eli stood with the other challengers at the base of the mountain. The Seraphon warriors looked fierce and confident. Eli was smaller, less muscular, but his eyes showed determination. The climb was difficult. Sharp rocks, cold winds, and thin air tested every step. The Seraphon warriors pushed themselves hard, relying on strength and stamina. But Eli had another secret. He knew how to pace himself. He took careful breaths, watched his footing, and rested when he needed. When others stumbled, Eli kept going steadily. He used his knowledge of terrain and survival to find easier paths. At the top, Eli arrived just minutes behind the fastest warrior. The Seraphon were surprised. How could this smaller human match their strength? The Queen appeared at the summit to greet the challengers. She looked directly at Eli. "You are not the strongest," she said, But your endurance and will are remarkable. Eli smiled. Sometimes the mind is the strongest muscle. The third test was a challenge of knowledge and culture. The Seraphon were proud of their history and laws. Eli was taken to the Library of the Ancients, a giant hall filled with floating books and ancient scrolls. Here, scholars and diplomats debated ideas and solved problems. Eli was given a puzzle to solve: how to negotiate peace between two warring planets with different customs and beliefs. It was a test of empathy and understanding. Eli listened carefully to the problems of both sides. Then he suggested solutions that respected each culture's values. He proposed trade agreements and shared technology to build trust. The Seraphon diplomats were impressed. One said, "You do not just fight battles with weapons. You fight with words and ideas." The queen nodded. Humans have strength in many ways. But not everyone in the Seraphon court welcomed Eli. Some saw him as a threat to their power. High-ranking officials whispered behind closed doors. They planned to test Eli further, to see if he could survive not just the tests, but the politics of the empire. One night, Eli was invited to a private meeting with one of the most powerful Seraphon nobles, Lord Varn. Varn was tall, with cold eyes and a sharp voice. "Commander Morgan," Varn said, "you have impressed many, but the Empire is a place of danger. To survive here, you must be stronger than just clever. You must prove your loyalty." Eli met Varn's gaze steadily. "I am here to help, but I will not betray my values." Varn smiled thinly. "We shall see." The days passed, and Eli continued to learn. He studied the Seraphon language, their customs, and their history. He met ordinary Seraphon citizens and heard their hopes and fears. One afternoon, a young Seraphon girl approached Eli. She was curious and bright-eyed. "You are different from others," she said quietly. "Why do you not give up?" Eli smiled. "Because giving up is easy. But if you want to change the future, you have to keep trying." The girl nodded. "Maybe humans are stronger than we thought." The biggest test came when the queen herself invited Eli to a private audience. The room was quiet, filled with soft light. "You have shown us much, Commander," she said, "but the true test is still ahead. Our empire faces threats beyond your imagination. If you want to help us, you must be ready to face them." Eli nodded. "I am ready, Your Majesty. I did not come here to be a legend. I came here to make a difference." The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke quietly. "Then prepare yourself, because soon the galaxy will change, and you will need to be more than a commander." As Eli left the palace, he looked up at the stars again. He felt the weight of the Empire's hopes and fears, but he also felt something stronger: hope. The human of legend was no longer just a story. He was here, and he was ready for what came next. The Seraphon Empire was a place of order and control, but the universe beyond was wild and dangerous. Eli Morgan knew this better than anyone. He had faced enemies in space before, enemies that never stopped coming. But nothing prepared him for what was about to arrive at the Seraphon capital. It started with strange signals picked up by the Empire's sensors, silent, fast-moving ships appearing at the edges of known space. The scientists called them the Void Swarm, a name that sent chills through every Seraphon heart. The Void Swarm was not like any enemy the Seraphon had fought. They were countless. They moved like a cloud, attacking without warning, overwhelming planets and fleets with numbers no one could count. Their ships were strange and organic, almost alive, and their weapons tore through shields and armor as if they were paper. The queen summoned her generals and advisors. "This enemy is unlike any before," she said, her voice steady but grave. "We must prepare to defend our empire. Commander Eli Morgan, your arrival is no accident. You will lead our defenses." Eli felt the weight of the moment. He looked around the room at the proud Seraphon leaders. They were warriors and scholars, but fear was in their eyes. "I will do my best," Eli said quietly. The next days were a whirlwind of activity. Seraphon fleets moved to defend the capital system, ships of every size prepared for battle. Scientists worked day and night to find ways to counter the Void Swarm's strange technology. Eli was given command of a small task force. His ship was older and smaller than many others, but he knew size was not the only factor. Before the battle, Eli gathered his officers. "The Void Swarm is different," he said. "They don't fight like other enemies. They attack in overwhelming numbers. Our weapons may not stop them. We need to be smart. We need to move fast and work together." His officers looked at him with mixed feelings. Some were unsure about trusting a human's ideas. Others saw the calm confidence he carried. The battle began without warning. The Void Swarm descended like a black storm, their ships swarming around the capital's defenses. The Seraphon fleets fired their powerful weapons, but many shots passed through the swarm or missed. The Void ships moved quickly, striking at weak points, and then disappearing into the darkness. Eli's task force stayed close together. He ordered his ships to split into smaller groups, attacking from different directions. "We must confuse them," he said. "They are strong in numbers, but not in coordination." His plan worked better than anyone expected. The smaller groups of Seraphon ships hit the swarm's edges, drawing their attention. Meanwhile, other ships struck deeper into the swarm's formation. Eli led the fastest group, moving through the chaos like a shadow. His crew worked quickly, adapting to new attacks and changing strategies in moments. During the battle, Eli noticed something strange. The Void Swarm's ships seemed connected, almost like parts of one living creature. When one ship was destroyed, others nearby changed their behavior quickly, moving to cover the gap. Eli realized that traditional attacks might not work. "We need to break their connection," he told his officers. "Hit their communication centers and cut them off from each other." The Seraphon scientists had developed special weapons designed to disrupt signals. Eli called for their use. When the weapons fired, the swarm began to falter. Without their shared control, the ships moved slower and less organized. The Seraphon fleet pushed forward, gaining ground, but the battle was far from over. The Void Swarm had one last terrible weapon, a massive ship. Larger than any Seraphon cruiser appeared from the darkness. It moved slowly but purposefully toward the capital. Its weapons charged, glowing with deadly energy. The Queen watched from the palace as the huge ship fired. The capital's shields shimmered and flickered under the attack. Eli knew this was the moment to act. "This ship is the key," he told his crew. "If we take it down, we can break the swarm." He led a daring mission. His small task force slipped through enemy lines, moving close to the massive ship. The enemy tried to stop them, but Eli's crews fought fiercely. Using the disrupted communications, they attacked weak points and avoided the heavy weapons. Finally, Eli's team launched a full assault on the huge ship's control center. Explosions rocked the vessel. The swarm's connection broke further, and their forces began to retreat. Back on the capital, the Queen smiled, relief in her eyes. "You have done what none of us could," she said to Eli. "You turned the tide." Eli nodded, tired but proud. "The fight is not over, Your Majesty. The swarm will return," she agreed. "Then we must be ready, together." In the days that followed, the Seraphon began rebuilding their defenses. They studied the Void Swarm's technology, learning to adapt and improve. Eli worked closely with scientists and commanders. He taught them human ways of thinking, how to be flexible, creative, and fast. The Queen invited Eli to join her council. "Your mind is a gift to this empire," she said. "We need your ideas." Eli accepted, knowing this was more than a title. It was a chance to change the galaxy's future. One evening, Eli stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The stars were bright and endless above. A Seraphon soldier joined him. "Commander," she said softly, "you have given us hope." Eli smiled. "Hope is the strongest weapon we have." The soldier nodded. "We are lucky to have you." Eli looked at the sky. "No, we are lucky to fight together. The galaxy was dangerous and uncertain, but with new friends and new ideas, the human of legend was ready. The fight for the stars had only just begun. After the fierce battle with the Void Swarm, the Seraphon Empire was shaken but alive. Their capital had been saved, but the threat was far from over. The Void Swarm was wounded, but it still had the power to destroy entire worlds. Eli Morgan stood before the Queen and her council in the Great Hall. The air was thick with tension and uncertainty. The Seraphon leaders needed hope, and Eli was determined to give it to them. "The swarm will return," Eli said firmly. "They are not finished, but we have learned much from our fight. Now, we must change how we fight." The Queen nodded slowly. "Tell us, Commander, how do we defeat an enemy that never stops?" Eli took a deep breath. "We fight like humans do. We adapt, we surprise, and we never give up." Eli began working closely with the Seraphon scientists and generals. Together, they developed new weapons and strategies. Instead of huge fleets attacking all at once, they created small, fast units that could strike quickly and disappear before the enemy could respond. They called these groups the Phantoms. The Phantoms would use hit-and-run tactics, attacking weak points and confusing the swarm. Eli trained the Phantoms personally. He taught them how to think like humans, how to stay calm under pressure, how to trust each other, and how to use creativity to solve problems. The Phantoms grew in skill and confidence. Word of their success spread quickly throughout the Empire. The Seraphon people began to believe that victory was possible. Meanwhile, the Queen made a bold decision. She sent Eli and a small team on a secret mission deep into the swarm's territory. Their goal was to find the source of the swarm's power and destroy it. The journey was dangerous. The team traveled through empty space filled with the remains of destroyed ships and planets. Every moment was filled with risk. Eli's crew worked together like never before. They trusted his leadership and each other. When they finally found the source, a massive, living space station that controlled the swarm, Eli knew their real battle was just beginning. The station was alive in a way no one had seen before. Its walls moved and shifted like a giant creature. Strange energy pulsed from its core. Eli and his team planned carefully. They used all their training to avoid detection and sneak inside. Inside, they found the control center. It was filled with strange machines and glowing symbols. Eli realized that if they destroyed this place, the swarm would lose its control. The team planted explosives and prepared to leave, but as they moved to escape, the station's defenses woke up. Aliens like no one had seen before attacked them. Scifi's fight was brutal. Eli's team used every skill and trick they knew to survive. They worked together, covering each other and fighting with courage. Finally, they reached their ships and escaped just as the explosives detonated. The station exploded in a brilliant flash. The control over the swarm was broken. Back in the Empire, news of the mission's success spread quickly. The Void Swarm's ships began to lose coordination. Many retreated into the darkness. The Queen called Eli to her throne room. "You have done the impossible," she said. "You have changed the course of this war." Eli shook his head. "The war is not over, Your Majesty, but now we have a chance to win." The Seraphon fleet took advantage of the chaos in the swarm. They launched coordinated attacks, driving the enemy back. The Phantoms were everywhere, striking quickly and disappearing. Eli led many of these missions himself. His experience and quick thinking saved countless lives. The Seraphon soldiers grew to respect the humans more and more. They learned that strength came not only from powerful weapons, but from unity and hope. One night, as the battle raged on, Eli stood with the queen on a balcony overlooking the city. The stars were bright, and the city lights shimmered below. The queen looked at Eli. "You have done more than I expected. You have become part of this empire." Eli smiled. "I am honored. But this is not just my fight. It is ours." She nodded. "Together, we are stronger." The tide was turning. The Seraphon Empire, once proud but divided, was now united and hopeful. The human of legend had shown them a new way to fight and to live. The galaxy was still dangerous, but for the first time, victory seemed possible. The war with the Void Swarm had lasted longer than anyone expected, but with the destruction of the Swarm's control station and the rise of the Phantoms, the Seraphon Empire had begun to push back the endless tide of enemy ships. Hope returned to the people, and so did a new sense of purpose. Commander Eli Morgan stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars streak past as their fleet moved toward the next battlefront. The crew around him were calm but alert, each ready to fight for their home. Eli thought about everything that had happened: the battles, the tests, the friends he had made, and the trust he had earned. It was more than he had ever hoped for when he first arrived. The next battle was the most important yet. The Void Swarm had gathered a massive fleet near the edge of the galaxy, planning to destroy the last major Seraphon outpost. If the outpost fell, the entire empire could collapse. Eli's fleet was smaller but faster and more flexible. The Queen had entrusted him with command of the entire defense. Before the battle began, Eli addressed his fleet. "This fight will be hard. The enemy is desperate and so are we. But remember what we have learned. Stay united, think quickly, and never give up." The ships cheered in their own way, engines humming with readiness. When the Void Swarm fleet arrived, it was a dark cloud, vast and terrifying. Their ships moved as one, searching for weaknesses. The battle started with a thunderous roar. Explosions lit the dark space as both sides clashed. Eli's strategy was to use the Phantoms to break the Swarm's formation. Small groups of ships darted in and out, striking key targets and confusing the enemy. The Seraphon fleet followed, hitting hard where the Swarm was weakest. Eli led one of the Phantom groups himself, racing through enemy lines, targeting supply, ships, and communication nodes. The fight was brutal. Ships were lost on both sides. Eli's ship shook under heavy fire, but he stayed calm. Suddenly, an enormous Void Swarm vessel emerged. It was even larger than the control station they had destroyed before. This ship was the Swarm's new command center. Eli knew that if this ship fell, the enemy would collapse. But it was heavily guarded. Eli gathered his captains. "This is our chance," he said. "We strike this ship together, all at once. We end this war here." The captains agreed. The fleet formed into a tight formation, engines glowing bright. They launched their attack. The battle around the massive ship was fierce. The Swarm's defenses were strong, but the Seraphon fleet was faster and smarter. Eli's Phantoms slipped inside the battle, targeting critical systems. Eli ordered his ship to take the lead, aiming for the ship's core. Inside the enemy vessel, Eli and his team fought through alien creatures and automated defenses. Their weapons blazed, and their teamwork kept them alive. Finally, Eli reached the core room. He placed explosives and set the timer. The team raced back to their ships as the countdown began. Explosions shook the enemy ship, and fire spread through its halls. The massive ship began to collapse. Eli's ship barely escaped the blast radius. Back in space, the Void Swarm's fleet faltered. Without their command ship, they lost coordination. The Seraphon fleet pushed forward, driving the enemy back into deep space. The war was over. The Queen declared a day of celebration. The Empire rejoiced. Eli Morgan was hailed as a hero, not just for his courage, but for bringing new hope and new ways to fight. But Eli knew this was just the beginning. In the days after the victory, Eli met with the queen and her council. "We have won the war," Eli said, "but the galaxy is still dangerous. We must build a future where all can live in peace." The queen smiled. "You have changed us, Eli. Together we will build that future." Eli stayed in the Seraphon Empire, helping to rebuild and strengthen alliances with other planets and species. The Phantoms became a symbol of hope and unity. The human of legend was no longer just a story. He was a leader, a friend, and a part of something greater. One evening, as Eli stood under the stars, the young Seraphon girl from before approached him. "Commander," she said, "do you think humans will come back to visit?" Eli smiled. "I think humans and Seraphon will be friends for a long time. We will face the stars together." She looked up at the sky and nodded. The galaxy was vast and full of unknown dangers. But with courage, friendship, and hope, the future was bright. The human of legend had arrived, and this was only the dawn.